Alexander Chen stood in the upscale restaurant. Adjusting his tie for the third time at 39, he had built a pharmaceutical empire and graced the covers of business magazines. But tonight he felt more nervous than he had in years. His assistant had arranged this blind date with someone she described as stunning, and sophisticated Alexander told himself he wasn't shallow, but after 3 failed relationships with women who only saw his wealth, he wanted someone who matched his lifestyle, someone polished and professional, someone without complications. The hostess approached Mr. Chen. "Your date has arrived." Alexander turned, expecting to see the elegant woman his assistant had described instead. He saw a young woman in a simple blue dress holding a baby. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. The baby in her arms wore a pink floral dress and was chewing on her own fingers. A young woman looked as confused as Alexander felt. "I'm looking for Alexander Chen," she said to the hostess. "I'm supposed to meet him for dinner." "That's me," Alexander said, unable to hide his surprise. The woman's face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "There's been a terrible mistake." She turned to leave, but the hostess gently stopped her. "Perhaps you should at least talk," the hostess suggested kindly. Alexander's manners overrode his shock. "Please, let's sit down and figure this out." They moved to the reserved table. The woman settled the baby on her lap. Clearly uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I think our mutual friend Sophie set us both up. She told me I was meeting someone for a casual coffee to discuss childcare options." "Not a blind date, Sophie," Alexander repeated, recognizing his assistant's middle name. "She told me I was meeting a corporate lawyer." "I'm a waitress," the woman said quietly. "And this is my daughter Emma. She's 14 months old." "I had no idea this was supposed to be romantic." "I would never have come," Alexander studied her. She was pretty in an understated way. But more importantly, she looked honest. "What's your name?" he asked. "Grace," she replied. "Grace Morrison?" "Well, Grace, we've both been manipulated," Alexander said. "The question is what we do now." Grace shifted Emma to her other hip. "I should go. This clearly isn't what either of us signed up for." "Have you eaten?" Alexander asked. "Not since lunch," Grace admitted. "Then stay," Alexander said, surprising himself. "We're here, the food is excellent, and it seems a shame to waste a reservation because Sophie decided to meddle." Grace hesitated. "I have Emma." "I can see that," Alexander replied. "The restaurant is family-friendly, and I suspect they can provide a high chair." Something in Grace's expression shifted. "You're not angry?" "I'm annoyed at Sophie," Alexander said, "but you're not responsible for her schemes." They ordered dinner. Emma sat in a high chair, happily playing with a breadstick as they ate. They talked. Grace explained that she was a single mother working 2 jobs to support her daughter. "Emma's father left when I told him I was pregnant," she said without drama. "He made it clear he wasn't interested in being a parent." "That must have been difficult," Alexander said. "It was," Grace agreed. "But I have Emma, and she's worth everything." The love in her voice was unmistakable. Alexander found himself sharing more than he intended, about the loneliness of success, about relationships that felt transactional. "Everyone wants something," he admitted. "Connections, investments, introductions. I can't remember the last time someone was interested in me rather than what I could do for them." Grace listened without judgment. "That sounds isolating," she said, "but I think you're looking in the wrong places." "What do you mean?" "You said you've dated successful women, corporate types." "People who match your lifestyle," Grace said. "But if they're focused on success, they're probably approaching relationships the same way they approach business. As transactions," Alexander finished. "Exactly," Grace said. "Maybe you need someone who values different things." Emma started fussing, and Grace automatically began soothing her. Alexander watched, fascinated by the ease of their interaction. "How old are you?" he asked. 26, Grace replied, then looked defensive. "I know I'm young, but I've learned more in the past 2 years than most people learn in a decade." "I don't doubt it," Alexander said. He meant it after dinner. Alexander walked Grace to her car. It was old and had a dent in the passenger door. Emma had fallen asleep against Grace's shoulder. "Thank you for staying," Alexander said. This turned out better than I expected. Me too, Grace admitted. You're not what I imagined when Sophie said corporate executive. What did you imagine? Someone cold and dismissive, Grace said honestly. Someone who would take one look at me and Emma and walk away? I almost did, Alexander confessed. For about 30 seconds, I thought about leaving. What stopped you? Grace asked. You looked as uncomfortable as I felt, Alexander said, and I realized we were both victims of the same setup. It seemed unfair to punish you for Sophie's interference. Grace smiled. Well, I'm glad you stayed. Alexander found himself wanting to see her again, but he hesitated. Grace was young, struggling financially, and had a child. This was exactly the kind of complication he'd been trying to avoid. Yet she was also genuine, kind, and refreshingly honest. Grace, I know this is unconventional, but could I take you to dinner again? He asked. Properly this time, with advance notice so you can arrange childcare? Grace looked surprised. Why? Because I enjoyed talking to you, Alexander said. Because you're the first person in years who seems to see me rather than my resume. I don't think we're in the same league, Grace said carefully. You live in a different world than I do. Maybe that's exactly what I need, Alexander replied. Grace was quiet for a moment. One dinner, she agreed. But if this is some kind of charity case thing, I'm not interested. It's not, Alexander assured her. I'm interested in you, not in fixing your life. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other regularly. Alexander discovered that Grace was sharp, funny, and had a perspective on life he'd never encountered. She worked hard, loved deeply, and never asked him for anything. Grace learned that beneath Alexander's polished exterior was someone lonely and searching for meaning. You have all this success, she observed one evening, but you don't seem happy. I'm not unhappy, Alexander said. That's not the same thing, Grace pointed out. She was right. 3 months into their relationship, Alexander's colleagues began to notice. Who is she? His business partner asked. We've never seen you this relaxed. Alexander told him about Grace, about Emma, about the blind date setup, about how everything he thought he wanted had been wrong. You're dating a waitress with a baby? His partner asked incredulously. I'm dating an incredible woman who happens to be a waitress and a mother, Alexander corrected. The distinction mattered. 6 months after that first accidental dinner, Alexander brought Grace and Emma to a charity gala. His colleagues were polite but puzzled. Grace, wearing a simple dress she'd made herself, was intimidated but gracious. I don't belong here, she whispered to Alexander. You belong wherever you choose to be, he replied. During the event, Emma started crying. Grace automatically moved toward the exit to avoid disturbing others. Alexander followed. They ended up in the quiet hallway, Grace bouncing Emma while Alexander loosened his tie. I'm sorry, Grace said. I knew this was a bad idea. This is the best part of my evening, Alexander said honestly. He looked at Grace, holding her daughter, completely unconcerned about the fancy party she was missing, and he realized something that should have been obvious months ago. I love you, he said. Grace stared at him. What? I love you, Alexander repeated. I love your strength and your honesty and the way you see the world. I love how you love Emma. I love that you've never once asked me for anything. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, she whispered. But Alexander, I come with complications. I have a daughter. I work long hours. I live in a tiny apartment. I can't give you the lifestyle you're used to. You give me something better, Alexander said. You give me authenticity. You make me want to be a better person. Not a richer one, he took her hand. I know this is fast, and I know we come from different worlds, but Grace, I want to build something real with you, with both of you. Emma chose that moment to reach for Alexander. He took her automatically, and she snuggled against his shoulder. Grace watched them with wonder. You mean that? She said. You really mean it? Every word, Alexander confirmed. They married a year later. Grace wore a simple dress that cost less than Alexander's tie. Emma was the flower girl, and mostly tried to eat the petals Alexander's colleagues attended. Many still baffled by his choice, but as Alexander watched Grace walk toward him, Emma toddling beside her, he felt something he'd never experienced in all his years of success: complete certainty. This was what he'd been looking for. Not sophistication or status, but genuine love, freely given with no agenda Grace had stolen. His heart not through manipulation or strategy, but through simple honesty and kindness. She had shown him that the best things in life can't be planned or controlled. They arrive unexpectedly, in simple blue dresses carrying babies, looking nothing like what you thought you wanted, but everything you actually needed if this story touched your heart. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment about a time when life gave you something different than what you expected, and it turned out to be exactly what you needed.